In this video, we will show you how to replace your front upper control arm on this 2009 Dodge Dakota. This is part of the suspension located directly behind the wheel. Let's get started. The first thing you need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so your wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, continue on to removing all 5 of your 22mm lug nuts and then the wheel. If you have a dust cover, remove that as well. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, let's go ahead and follow our ABS wire coming up the control arm and then all the way up to the wheel well. You can see that you have the tip of the push clip coming through. Use a trim tool and come from the back side of the wheel well here and pry up against the ABS wire. We're going to try to pull this right out of here. Once you have that down, you can bring it down to an area that you can service this. Looking at this area, you can tell that there's a little tab that we can squeeze in and then gently pull this apart. Once we do, we'll give it a quick check for corrosion. This one looks fine. Let's follow the wire down to the upper control arm. To remove this from its locking clip, we'll use a small pocket screwdriver. Come right in between this clip and gently pry this to separate it. Once you have that up, continue on to removing the ABS wire from the clip itself. We'll give that a quick inspection. Now we'll bring this down over to this side. Next, we're going to move along to removing the caliper from this area. But when we do, it's important to make sure that you have something holding the rotor in place. I'll continue on with a spacer and one of my lug nuts to hold the rotor to the wheel bearing. Now we can start removing the caliper. You'll notice for this you have 2 21mm bolts holding it in place. We'll loosen the top one, leave it in there a couple threads, fully remove the lower one. Inspect all of your hardware as you remove it, replace it as necessary. Now we'll start removing the caliper. When you do, it's important to make sure that you hang it on something so it's putting no pressure on the flex hose. Before we hang it, let's just take a quick peek at those pads. Make sure it looks like they're not worn or damaged in any way. If they are, it's a good idea to go ahead and replace them. Now I'll hang this aside so we can continue. The next thing we'll do is continue by applying a little bit of pressure underneath the lower control arm. Move along to your 21mm ball joint nut. We'll start removing this. Then the next thing you want to do is remove the ball joint from the steering knuckle. Let's take that nut and put it back on, just a couple threads. The next thing you need to do is break this free. To do this, you can either use a ball joint separator and gently pry this, or just give this area a couple bonks to try to break it free. We'll use our hammer. Now we'll use a pry bar, carefully get in between that control arm and the coil spring on the front strut. Gently pry down on the control arm so you can fully remove that nut. After that, we'll continue on by lifting the control arm up and out of the knuckle. Now that we have the knuckle dislodged from the upper control arm, let's continue on to our bracket that holds the ABS wire. This can be removed by using a small pick or small screwdriver. Carefully come down inside this lower area, you'll find a slot. Grab onto the little ear inside there and gently pry it up. You can see it's starting to release right there. Once you've got that to the point that it's ready to release, go ahead and grab onto this and remove it. We'll give that a quick inspection because we will be reusing it. Set it aside. Before we continue to our two top bolts, pay attention to the height of the control arm. You'll find that it's not hanging all the way down up against the strut. This is sitting in the original ride height position. This is important to note, so when you put in the brand new control arm, you want to make sure you have it tightened in the exact same spot. With that said, let's continue with an 18mm socket to remove each of our mounting bolts. You'll find that you have an 18mm head, and on the nut side, it's actually a captured nut with a little tab that comes down, holding the nut in place. Reach back here, I'll grab that nut. At this point, we'll leave the forward bolt in and continue to do the same thing to the rear. Take hold of the control arm and remove each of your mounting bolts. Remove the control arm from the vehicle. There it is, friends. Okay, friends, let's get ready to install our brand new upper control arm. Take this and put it in position. Once you have it properly aligned, continue on with your two mounting bolts. With each of those in there, you can start on the mounting nuts. You'll notice as you continue to tighten, the tab will make its way around and hit up against the frame, holding it in place. Let's put that control arm in its original position, holding it in place with a pry bar. Let's snug each of these mounting bolts. Once they're snug, torque each of them to 130 foot-pounds. Let's put our ABS wire bracket in place. Lock it in. Listen for a click, make sure it's completely secured. The next thing we need to do is get ready to start lowering the upper control arm down into the knuckle. This is going to be easiest using a prying device. Now we can bottom out this nut and torque it to 70 foot-pounds. Now, since we replaced the upper control arm, the mounting nut is a slotted nut, and you'll find that the stud has a hole going through it. So I'm just going to line up the hole with the very next slot on the mounting nut and put in a locking cotter pin. Now we'll pin this over, trim off the excess. Continue on to the ABS wire. We'll put it into the bracket and lock it into position. Now we can connect this up and behind the fender well. Reach up, grab that wire, line up the locking tab, press it in, listen for a click, give it a tug to make sure it's secure. Now we'll take this tab and put it through from the backside out and through this area. At this point, we can remove the pressure from underneath the lower control arm. Let's move along to the brake caliper. We'll slide it in position over the rotor, align our 2 mounting bolt holes, and start in each of those 21mm headed bolts. Now we can snug them up and torque them to 130 foot-pounds. Let's remove the lug nut and the spacer from this area. Let's get our wheel on here. Start on all 5 of your 22mm lug nuts, bottom them out. Once you have those snug, get the wheel safely back down on the ground. We'll continue on to torquing each of the lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay, friends, we've got the truck back together. At this point, go ahead and hop inside the passenger compartment, pump up the brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Take your vehicle for a road test, make sure you don't have an ABS light and no funny noises. After that, go ahead and get yourself safely down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.